Meow. Meow.
¡Demonio!
Bravo.
It sounds like someone pretending to be a cat.
It's really cat.
It does.
Look at this.
Oh, he's huge. Look at your big paws and your crazy face. He looks like a torpedo with arms.
He does.
Welcome to the QUACKCAST, the Drunk Duck QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 438. With me is Tanserine. Hi, Tans.
Hola.
And Pitface. Hi. Hi. Oh, Pit's frozen? No, she's pretending to be frozen. She's being silent. Hi, I'm Pitface. Is she actually saying anything, or is she just pretending? Oh, her microphone is dead. Pitface is wordlessly screaming at the moment, swearing, great invective, and yeah. Oh, poor Pit. So we're talking about the idea of the audience doesn't get it. When the audience doesn't get it, when you as an artist, when you as a creator, a genius, a writer, have produced some meaningful work that your audience just doesn't seem to be able to grasp those higher meanings that you've put into your work. So what do you do when that happens? What do you do? Do you scream at them and call them Philistines and quit your work forever and go into writing advertising jingles? Do you do that? Or do you double down and create something even more impenetrable, forcing your audience to exercise their little grey cells in order to possibly grasp even a hint of the complexities you have put forward to them? Do you do that, or do you just forget it and just keep on going? Yeah. Who knows?
Actually, guys, don't ever try to do that to your audience.
Well, people do. So before we get into that, I've got to bring up the featured comic. QUACKCAST has given us a feature, and this week it's called The Feelings of a High School Girl. So, yeah, The Feelings of a High School. Take it away, Kwai. Give us that.
Hello, this is QUACKCAST, and the feature I've selected for this week is The Feelings of a High School Girl by Locke Polymorpha, and it is rated T for teen. Kanji's home life is pretty normal. He has a sister who likes to live stream video games all night long to adoring fans, and a mother who oversleeps, which forces Kanji to exhibit a fair amount of independence at his age. However, a part of Kanji is different from his peers. He is haunted by a recurring nightmare where he's in a building and a freak accident causes him to lose his arm and have it replaced by a robotic arm attachment. Only, this is not only a dream, it is a traumatic event that happened when Kanji was younger. Now he has to figure out how to continue to do the things he loved, like will he ever play guitar again like he did when he was a boy? The art is drawn in a black and white manga format with eclectic art, coloring, and page layouts. Follow Kanji on his way to school and read The Feelings of a High School Girl by Locke Polymorpha, rated T.
And that was Feelings of a High School Girl. Kwai, thank you very much for picking out that one and reviewing it, and also giving me the terrible, dastardly knowledge that next week it's my turn to do a featured comic. All right. So next up we have the featured music. Garmelis this week has given us the theme to The Frolic, which is such a weird title for a comic. The Frolic. Deep, multi-layered, full, complex, and interesting. This one leads us into the green, dark forests and dry desert caves and other hidden places, hinting at deeper truths within the depths beyond. So take it away, Gumwallace, with The Frolic. And that was the theme, the featured music by Garb Willis. The comic is called The Frolic, and it's done by Paulie Blade. Rated M. Paulie Blade. Wouldn't you love to have a last name like Blade? That's fantastic. I think
It's nice.
I think I'd name my child something like I don't know
Don't name him Blade.
Danger Blade.
Danger.
The first name Danger,
That's a
last name
recipe
Blade.
for a disaster in school.
They'd grow up to be like a superhero or a spy or something, or a police, a super cop. Danger.
They would absolutely diss the name if they were a spy, though.
Super obvious. Oh, jeez. I love it. That's just fantastic. I wonder if that's the person's real name. People are actually called things like that, so I bet that is the real name. All right, let's get into the QUACKCAST. When your audience doesn't get something. So I did sort of mention the idea of if your audience doesn't get something, you create something that's absolutely impenetrable because of it. Many artists have actually done that. That's not a comical thing I just made up. That's actually what people have done. Not just artists, but people who create comics and people who create all sorts of things, music and writing and architecture. They've gone down that route and just been a dick about it. Well, maybe not a dick, but just having fun and just thinking, okay, if they're not going to get it, then I'm going to give them something they're really not going to get. And they've turned that into a thing. And, do
you have an example of that?
I probably could think of something, but the thing that is foremost in my mind is an episode of Rocko's Modern Life, this fantastic cartoon that I enjoyed. It was just so fun, about this little Australian wallaby and his best friend Heifer, who's a cow, and his other friend Filbert, who is a turtle. Anyway, it's a very silly show. And there was a meta aspect to it in that he got to know this guy who was made cartoons, a director of cartoons, and Rocco really loved the cartoon. It's called The Fatheads that he really loved, and that was like a comment on the cartoon making process itself. And the director of the cartoons was actually played by the director of the actual cartoon itself, which was a fun thing. Anyway, this director was really annoyed that his cartoons were not really being seen in the best light. So he thought, well, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to do something that's completely my own thing. I'm not going to go for meaning anymore. I'm just going to do random crap. So he has like a cheese talking to a sausage and a knife and fork and stuff like that. And he's just getting more and more abstract. But well, actually, no, he's not even giving it meaning. So rather than actually giving it meaning, he's just like thinking, okay, look, if people don't get my work, I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want. So he's just doing cheese and stuff like that. And meanwhile, the critics are like putting meaning onto it that doesn't exist. And they go, oh my God, this is his best work yet. This is so subtle and sublime and genius.
That reminds me a lot of Salvador Dali.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was what I'm thinking of was quite more extreme, I think. And so there was this whole. I mean, he generally was very heavy on meaning in his work in general, Dali. But he was very pissed that extreme high society socialites were sort of treating it like something that was a novelty and like a status symbol and not really getting into his meaning per se, but just having it as a trophy. So what he did was that he took a nice box and he put excrement in the box, his excrement, and he sealed it. Yeah, he sealed it, and he said that this was it wasn't meaningful. He did it to prove a point. This was his most meaningful work. And it sold for I don't know how much. And he completely, I mean, he didn't get, he got to the point he wanted, that if you are hyped enough, you're going to be able to sell pretty much anything, whether it is meaningful or not. But he still wasn't happy that it was so successful.
That has repeated itself a few times. I mean, like there's the famous art of the Dadaists. That started out. People still don't really acknowledge it today, but it started out as a joke. The famous fountain by Duchamp. That was literally, the work was literally a joke. It wasn't meant to be, very strongly meaningful. It was junk. It was something disgusting, a toilet repurposed and called the fountain. But that was actually a joke on his audience and the people at the time. But that created a bit of a movement, and people still look at that work and go, "Oh my God, that's beautiful! That's so clever! That's subverting everything." But it was made as a joke on the art movement at the time, and how people just put meaning on things that didn't necessarily have, weren't meant to have meaning. When you talk about shit in excrement, there was an Italian artist, famous Italian artist, who actually did that live. He tinned his own excrement in the gallery, sealed in tins, and sold it for vast amounts, and it went into collections. And these people bought it. And years later, it actually fermented in the tins, and it started to explode.
Oh, shit.
Yes, exactly. Literally. Yeah. So.
Oh my God, no.
That was a rather unintended consequence, but I think a good one. So yeah, that's more a reaction to if people are putting extra meaning, then I'll put no meaning into it and see what they do. So that's it's really taking it into the other way. But unfortunately, it always backfires. It always backfires, because what happens is the people think, "Oh my God," that people put even more meaning into it, and then it seduces you as the artist to think, "Oh, I've got to run with this now. I'm really successful with it. I have to keep on going and turn this into my thing now. That worked for me."
So I've been Googling to find the reference for the Salvador Dali thing that I just said, so that you can post it.
Oh.
And instead I found the exact same story done by this artist called Piero Manzoni.
Oh, that was the Italian artist.
Yeah, in 1961. He literally named it as artist's excrement, let's say. And it is worth even now $100,000.
If he could still get one of the tins of it. He did a few of them, I think.
So, and
that's lovely.
Of course, Dali has a history with poo anyway, but I'm still trying to find that particular one.
Okay.
But anyway, even if it's not his story, I mean, there are a lot of artists that have done it.
It's popular. They produced it themselves.
And it says here, many of the cans, oh my God, many of the cans have since exploded due to composition producing gas inside the sealed tins.
Exactly.
Oh my God. I wonder, like, it would probably be, since it's so expensive, put somewhere prominently before it exploded.
In the home gallery or something like that. Or it just
Yeah.
coated everything. Lovely, fresh
Oh,
as the day it was tinned.
that's even more symbolic in many ways.
And it was an unintended consequence. He did not know that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well, let's stop talking about it. It's making
Super
me sick.
Yeah.
There are a lot of artists that have worked with that sort of thing, and all right. But who has done something that has made it even more complicated as a reaction? A lot of jazz musicians have done that.
Let's move on from excrement in general. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not talking about that anymore. But there have been jazz
Oh,
musicians
okay.
who've made like super complicated pieces in reaction to their audience not getting it and just getting more and more up themselves and just going, okay, no longer this jazz. It's going to be totally. I'm just going to blow C notes as high as I can, just over and over and over, and that's my thing. Sun Ra. That's one of these famous jazz musicians. They all had names like that, very pretentious.
Yeah. And the thing is, movies also do that. I think one that I can think of right now is Donnie Darko. I think.
Oh, I like
It's
that movie.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that the people consider it very symbolic. Personally, I don't see a lot of meaning in it, but that's my personal opinion. So there's that.
Yeah, Donnie Darko isn't as clever as is made out. Although I will say the director did put in a lot of hidden meaning that people couldn't possibly get in that film, and it came out like years later. All this kind of hidden meanings. They had a whole website that was also tied into it, which is a total failure of creation there because that website's not available anymore. But you used to be able to. It used to be like the website was another part of the film in that you'd go to the website and you'd click on here and you'd click on this hidden link and click on that hidden link and it would take you to different like explanations or hints at the meaning of the things in the film, which you're never going to be able to do now because that's not saved. So the film did have like extra meaning, but it was rather irrelevant to the film itself. The story of the film is pretty straightforward. There is like a slight mystery about time travel and like intention being meaning and stuff like that, but it's not really that clever. It's pretty surface level, really. But people do just sort of imagine that there was extra super duper meaning, and it was really, and they still look at it and they still can't get it. But it's not that. There is a bit of a mystery in the film, like this. It's not a spoiler to say. In the start of the film, an aircraft engine comes down and crashes on Donnie's mum and his sister, I think, and they're killed. Something like that. Or maybe Donnie's
I remember
killed.
something like that. And then it is he goes back to just before this happens, I think.
Yeah. It's and you have to sort of work out why, but it really isn't that that hard to. Once you've seen the film, it's all pretty obvious. It sort of sorts itself out. So
So have you got any symbolism in your webcomic? Pinky TA?
Well, I mean, I started Pinky TA because I had been an art student for many years, doing art academically. And we don't really, in Australia, we don't learn much about the methods of art and skill sets. We're taught very much through, symbolism and meaning. Damn it, what's the word in art practice?
Interpretation. Part history.
Yeah. there's another word for it. I can't remember it at the moment, but yeah, it's all to do with meanings rather than the actual physical object. Physical object is secondary. It's the meaning behind it. So when I created Pinky TA, when I was when I created, I had to have some sort of deeper meaning behind it because I was just taught. It was just drummed into my head, so I had no, real choice in the matter because that was so much of how I was taught to think about, creation. So I did have that idea in my head when I was making it. And I've said it many times, I think, on the QUACKCAST. It's the meaning. One of the meanings behind Pinky TA was like an examination of, like manga and the themes in that. What was really popular in pop culture at the time when I created it. Very, very sexy women, that sort of thing. The way military and guns and war and death is also like pictured as being very heroic and sexy. And so I was examining that and also like contrasting that with the reality of war. War is not a sexy, lovely thing, but it can be seductive and it's designed to be seductive. Especially like the way we look at it in pop culture, it's very seductive. So I was doing that in the comic, but also showing like the nastiness and the disillusionment that was underneath it. So that was part of what was going on when I created Pinky TA. I had all that kind of stuff in my head. So definitely. Sorry for a long-winded answer there to you.
Oh, I mean, we are taking symbolism, so.
Yeah. So definitely. So there was meaning behind it, not too directly. I didn't actually put symbols in there to point to that, I think, but yeah, definitely there was meaning. How about you with so you've got your Without Moonlight and Brave Resistance, and I can't remember the Wolf. It was just called Wolf. That was the other comic. It was just called Wolf.
Yes.
So what were the meanings in those things? Conceptual art. That's what I was trying to think. Sorry, conceptual art.
Oh, okay. Got you.
There we are. Yeah, so the meaning in Wolf.
The meaning in Wolf. Oh, God.
Anti-vaxxers,
okay,
that was it.
What?
It was about the danger of anti-vaxxers.
Exactly. That was it. That would be the prequel to Wolf, though. That's how they all got the disease in the first place. I don't think it really had any symbolism really to talk about, except perhaps, no, I don't think Wolf has any heavy symbolic representation of anything. You could say that the way that the virus manifests in Wolf that makes them wolf out, in a sense, is triggered by emotions. So they have to get angry, they have to get, or very distressed. I mean, things like that. And then you get this the red eye thing that shows that they are seeing red, in a sense, while they are having the crisis, and they are not going to be rational, blah, blah, blah. But that's the most that I could put reasonably in terms of symbolism in Wolf. It's a very straightforward biomedical thriller sort of thing. Nothing.
So what you're hinting at is your magnum opus is Without Moonlight. That is where you've put all your eggs, all your symbolic and conceptual ideas.
Unfortunately, I mean, I only have one life, so probably it will take me all of it to make all of Without Moonlight, as I have it in my mind. So yeah, maybe. Without Moonlight has a couple of levels of symbolism. But you don't need to find it in order to enjoy the story or, generally follow, in a sense. So usually the symbolism is mostly within the individuals rather than anything else. Their names are all of their names are symbolic for all of them. And also what they are wearing is very symbolic. Of course, the Nazis are very narrowing down in their wardrobe. They wear very specific things because usually when we see them, they are on duty. So I can't really have them express themselves in that way.
So off duty, they would wear like black cloaks and red hooded clothes with horns.
Of course. I don't. I mean, everyone can understand that.
Exactly.
But for example, in the first couple of chapters, Martha has on a deep red dress under her coat, and she generally tends to wear off red and deep red clothes in the first stage, and that is symbolic in the sense that she feels that she is actually committing sins by sniping people, even if they are Nazis. So in Greece, there is a very famous. It's not a psalm. I have to go to Google to see what it translates to. But anyway, it is a song, let's say, that is about a woman called Cassiani, and she was supposed to be super sinful in every way you can imagine. And then she saw the light and she repented. And she was a highly intellectual individual and very artistic, so she created this particular poem. It's her poem, the song. And she is always depicted wearing a deep red dress.
Okay.
So that's the link.
So audience...
If you don't get it, it's very normal because you are not Greek Orthodox. It's fine.
The audience may not get that symbolism, but I think red is also a symbol of a willful or a wanton woman in Western culture as well. So
it does be like letters.
Exactly, it does have an association with sinfulness, but of a more sexual, earthy nature, rather than other sins.
So that's that one. When she moves on from that, she changes clothes.
Oh, okay.
Now she wears mostly black because she is in Greece.
She's mourning.
Yeah. So that's one thing.
Well, sorry, go on.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when you talk about colour, that's a thing, that definitely has been a thing in Pinky TA. Cece has her colours. And even so, initially when, she was introduced, she had like denim hot pants with a love heart on the crotch and a purple crop top and pink boots. And it doesn't matter what uniform she's wearing. She always is wearing like a variation on that. Like she could have jodhpurs and, like a military uniform kind of thing. And that color scheme always continues because that's her thing. Pinky is always, like when she's in the military, she always wears a red coat. And those are her colors. And that was just a symbol.
Well, it really stands out very much too against the world that she's in. And I got my voice back again. Second time this has happened. I hope it doesn't continue to happen. So sorry about that. But I mean, the colors that you choose for her really contrasts against the gunmetal gray sort of mecha world that she's in. Even when she's in the desert, she stands out.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, that was part of it, and part of it was like to emphasize the idea of so she's in the cavalry, and is to emphasize the idea that they were progressive thinkers and they were scientific thinkers in this world in the cavalry, and they were forward thinking. So that's why she's got this like mecha and scientific kind of stuff like that. And like in the current story, she's like trying to build this mecha and get it going. So there's progress is the theme. And the Navy, in the start of the comic, she's lands on this battleship and there's all these sailors around. They always wear blue. And Cece is also associated with the Navy, so she often wears a blue jacket over her gear. And the thinking there is Navy is incredibly conservative in their thinking. So, yeah, the blue is their color. So that was my thinking of that. I don't know. I doubt that would ever come through, but yeah, that was my idea. So Cece is
she almost...
Oh, go on.
No, I was just saying that, it's to the point where it's almost... You feel like it's almost unbelievable. Like it's almost like protagonist syndrome, but it doesn't feel like that for some reason. And I think it is because what you're doing comes across well enough to where it doesn't feel like it's some OC, that you threw up one day. It does feel purposeful that she's so flashy,
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's a hint behind that, because she's like got pink hair and all that kind of stuff, because she's part of in her arm of the military, individualism is encouraged, and being a character and that there's like in the real world we had famous generals like Montgomery and General Patton, and they were part of the cavalry. And there's Montgomery and his tanks, and Patton being a famous cavalry general, Rommel again being another famous cavalry general. And these people were very flashy and flamboyant in their styles, and noted even today for their particular fashions and individualism. So yeah, that was another thing behind the creation of Pinky, that she's flashy in her version of Montgomery's beret, or Patton's shiny stainless steel helmet and jodhpurs, or Rommel's fancy look with his goggles on his hat.
His goggles. Yeah. He's got the goggles, and then he's always got the binoculars. Everybody's got the binoculars.
No one did it like him, though. He had his thing. Yeah. So that was part of the symbolism in there, and maybe the audience gets it, maybe they don't. Sorry, Tance, I cut into you on the tangent of color. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No. That's a. I'm not sure why you're apologizing. Okay.
Oh, because. Sorry, go on.
It's fine. I had that particular area of symbolism anyway. The other symbol I use again on the characters is not only the color of clothing, but the style of clothing and what they are wearing every time. So, for example, if you take Fotis, he starts off wearing very, very simple clothes that point for the age of the boy, but he's not wearing the short trousers that used to be the norm for minors at the time, which is what, for example, another boy, Stelios, is wearing all the time. So he is not. He starts off being in the kids category, but he has long pants on, which means that he has had to take on some of the adult roles already. Not many, just enough. And then later, as he goes through his ordeal and everything, he starts wearing a jacket and other things that note him as more adult among adults. although he hasn't actually grown more than like 12 months since we start the story with him. So he's wearing more and more adult clothes, let's say, the good sense of the word, because he stops being a kid and progressively he becomes more and more an equal among equals with the adults. So, and that's why now in the beginning of chapter 6, there is, of course, going to be necessity because they are in the mountains, it's colder, and some of the repercussions of his condition, after the tortures are going to be evident because up to now we haven't seen much after this. So he's going to need extra layers. But the fact that he's wearing a military jacket is significant because he is now stepping up to be actually a soldier.
Yeah.
Not just a leaper and a little ruffian and things like that. So the clothes are important. Or, for example, take Iris. Iris is very coquettish and very, very stylish in everything. And she also wears red. Unlike Martha, her red is like the very hot, sexy red. She tends to prefer. And of course, she has makeup on.
Differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said the two characters code it differently.
Yes, exactly. She also has makeup on, which is like another face that she has. And now, okay, I'm not sure that anyone got this, so I'm gonna say it now. What it meant. So in the last scene, she's wearing a very expensive Dior 90s 40s dress, and it is very, very. It has a very austere cut. It is black with just some white endings, trimmings, or I don't really know fashion vocabulary, so I'm sorry. So it's very much like an SS uniform, although it is actually, a civilian's dress, because she is deciding to do something very defining in her alignment, such as it is.
Oh, right.
Right. So that's why she's wearing that black dress with the white trimmings.
Yeah, I feel like that came across a bit.
So it's to show alignment.
Yeah.
That's clever. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Do you have anything similar in Putrid Meat?
Putrid Meat, not so much. I mean, there's coding in the sense of, people wear things that identify them perhaps as certain groups and stuff, but I wouldn't call it symbolism in the sense that it connects the coding to any deeper stream of substance. But in there's not a whole lot of symbolism in Putrid Meat. It kind of wears itself on its sleeve. But in Blitzoff, however, there is a little bit going on. So the theme in Blitzoff, of course, is mostly death and exploration. And exploration is what living things do, and death is the thing that takes that away. Anyway, so there's different characters in Blitzoff that express how they see death differently. We have Blitzoff, who has become afraid of it, right? He's an explorer. He's become afraid of it. We have his brother, Blastov, who's afraid for his brother. I know, I still really pat myself on the back for that choice of naming.
I love them.
Thank you, Blitzoff and Blastov. And he is fearful of death, but not in the sense of death itself, just in the island of will it kill my brother? I know it's killed my parents and stuff. It's not something that he's thinking about constantly like Blitzoff is now. We have Camel, who's kind of doesn't think about it, just kind of shoves it in the corner, doesn't know, really care what's at the bottom of the deep hole that they throw dead bodies into. It's not part of her concern. But then there's the Doctor, and I put something a little bit symbolic in there, and I don't expect a lot of people to get it because it's something actually based off of a dream that I had. Well, no, that was later. So the Doctor's view, he doesn't outright say this is what I think of death, but when they're talking about it, he's taking care of the body of the Beauty, that woman character, if you remember her. By the time you meet her, she's dead, so I don't blame you if you don't. But so basically,
I remember.
yeah, okay. So Blitzov, he sees her and he's taken aback because, for one, she's dead. She died quite suddenly because there was a certain kind of worm that burrowed in her ear in the middle of the night. And so you have this beautiful person who was the symbol of beauty in Bunkuria and made everybody around her happy. She was part of this beauty cult, but we'll get into that some other time. And she's dead now out of nowhere. And the Doctor says that the beauty cult is too far away and they can't come and get her. And Blitzov says, well, she'll rot. And the Doctor says, well, you'll rot too one day. And then he relates it. He says, you love to explore and stuff like that, but think about the worm in her ear. And it kind of goes off. And but there's a little bit of kind of symbolism and a little smeckling of philosophy going on there that death is kind of in the eye of the beholder. But there's this other scene that I have later on as Blitzov's fear of death is deepening. He has this dream where he sees the Beauty and she's washing her hair. And because that's everybody, like, the Beauty isn't a sexual creature. She's just there to make this kind of dire world. She's just there to be beautiful and just make people happy. And Blitzov's favorite thing that she would do is wash her hair. He liked to watch her wash her hair. And so in the dream, she's washing her hair and she turns around and, of course, she's dead. She's got this skull face and she's kind of floating and this stomach plops out. Her stomach plops out and he wakes up. And the reason why I included that, and this is the thing that I don't expect a lot of people to get, because it seems more just like a jump scare, got you kind of thing, which I totally get. But the reason why I included that was some years ago, I had this dream when I myself was being kind of confronted by like deaths in the family and stuff. And in this dream, I went to this riverbank. And as I was approaching the river, it was in these beautiful, almost fairy tale-like woods. And as I was walking along the river, I find this drowned boar who had washed up along the shore. So I walked up to it and I knelt down and I looked at the boar quite closely. And I was kind of examining it. Like I noticed I could see where the bristles on its back had fallen out and its skin was kind of that soggy texture and stuff. And that I was just kind of contemplating it for a while until this figure walked up behind me. And I never turned around and looked at it, but it felt like a tall, dark figure. And it simply said, it didn't feel like it was there to hurt me, but it felt just kind of not interested in much, or it's hard to say. But it stood there and it came up behind me and it said it would grow those bristles back, but it doesn't have a stomach anymore. Its stomach had washed out. I forgot to mention that it washed out down the stream. And I woke up and it struck me as so profound because it was just this very mechanical way of looking at death, that looking at the body as if it's this devoid thing that just breaks down and there's nothing you can do about it. And granted, that's not something that I believe in, but it's something that scares me. And so I decided to instill that fear into Blitzoff. So that's why he had that dream and the stomach falls out. Which I never go on to explain, but it was just kind of my little thing of symbolism in there.
That's interesting. So that's the hint to the idea of death and the different ways of seeing it, spiritual or just mechanistic. Go on, Tans.
I would also want to say, like, falling back a little bit into the meaning that the audience sees into a work. When I was actually, to be honest, at this point, I really love Judith Mead. I have enjoyed the whole thing, and I still have certain scenes that are my favorites for various reasons. But I believe at this point that the Epic of Blitzoff is superior.
Oh, thank you very much. I hope I've gotten better and not worse.
I think it is superior because it does get you to think certain existential questions, and as Blitzoff goes through them. But also there is a lot of symbolism that whether you intended for it to be there or not, you can see it. I mean, you can project onto it. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. For example, the great pit where every dead body gets thrown in. The way that it is thrown in, like they do have a little flurry, a little funeral sort of pomp and circumstance. But when it comes to actually the quote-unquote interment, it's very unceremonial. It's just, down and shoot, and that's it. Okay, so that
slide, and then it's over.
It's done, and there you go. You are in with all the other dead, and that's that. And everyone gets the same pit. To me, that is very much like a symbolism of certain realities, absolutes in death, in the sense that, okay, up until the funeral end, you might have different ways of being handled, even through your funeral and everything. But afterwards, when all is said and done and the living return to their daily lives, whatever those may be, you get the exact same treatment as everybody else. You are in exactly the same pit as everybody else. So I really like that. I like that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I think it was very well executed. And that's one of the meanings that I saw in your work, whether it was intentional or not. And I definitely also saw the symbolism with the nightmare there, with the dead beauty. It was very, very high relief on what he was afraid of. I really liked it. And that's why art, of course, is also very much, it was already really good in Putrid Meat, but it's improved even more now. You take more risks with it, I think, which is something that I cannot say for myself. But I think all in all, it's a superior work. Go read it, everyone. And see the meaning in it that you find.
The writing, the dialogue, everything is far more crystallized.
Yeah.
And clear, knife honed and knife sharp in the Epic of Blitzoff.
Well, there's a lot more dialogue, period. In Putrid Meat, there's not much dialogue because it's just kind of driven by this happens and this happens. So it's kind of like a domino effect that you see going on. I think they're two different enough stories where it's kind of like apples to oranges a little bit. But I with Putrid Meat, I wouldn't feel comfortable making in-depth dialogues like I do in Blitzoff. I think it also wouldn't really belong there, but I also just wouldn't have felt comfortable doing it. So yeah, I do think that I've grown a bit, I hope.
So, okay, back to the topic though. What do you do when you have symbolism that your audience doesn't get? Do you just keep on going with it regardless? You just don't even care?
I don't know if people haven't got... I know that people have clued in that Blitzoff is about death, more or less, or that there's a theme of death. but people generally don't talk about it any deeper than that. And I don't know what people think about after they read the comic, if they think about it at all. Nobody really tells me, and that's fine. I kind of want people to walk away with it with their own things. That's why I don't like grabbing people by the wrist and saying, this is what I'm doing here. Usually, like I said before, I don't always completely know. I just kind of just let it happen. There is some forethought, but I want people to walk away with their own things. I would just like to hear about it a little bit more. That's all.
Comment, people. That's the whole. I would, leave comments. Say what you think.
Yeah. Well, taking a slightly different tack on this, one of the things that influenced me in the whole idea of the audience doesn't get it was there's this YouTuber, you know him, the Mother's Basement guy. And there was this one particular anime. He loved it. He loved where it was going. It's called Darling in the Franxx. And it's, superficially, it's about these young people living in this very weird artificial world in the middle of a desert, and they have to pilot these huge mechas to fight these monsters that are threatening their city. So that's the simple part of the story, but it's highly symbolic. There's many layers, and this guy used to rave about it, saying, oh my god, so much symbolism here, I love it. They've got even down to like the little ties they wear. Like the boys have these ties with a slight Y shape, and the girls have a tie and it's like X shape, so it's showing the genetic difference between the X and the Y chromosomes. It was like he went into that. And when as the anime went on and it went to the final part of it, his understanding of the symbolism, he couldn't get it anymore. And so his reaction to it was saying, oh my god, this is terrible. They've shit the bed. They've done it wrong. They don't know what they're doing anymore. They've lost the plot. And it really wasn't because the makers of the anime were doing anything differently at all. It was just because his understanding of the symbolism diverged from the meaning. He no longer got it. So to him it was terrible because, he just didn't understand it anymore. Which that's an interesting reaction to our work. When we do something that the audience no longer understands it, do they react in that way? Do they react with hate and saying, oh my god, you must be stupid. Because I can't understand your work. You've done something wrong. You're an idiot. Has that ever happened? I mean, you as an audience member, have you ever looked at something and thought, oh yeah, I understand this. Oh no, I think I understand everything about it and they're doing it wrong. The creator of this must be a fool because they've made all these errors and that's not how you do it. Is that
I do that all the time with movies and stuff, especially. I do it all the time, probably more than I should, but this is rubbish. For some reason I get almost, you could almost get heated when something really lets you down. But it's also kind of fun to look into why that's the case. Why didn't, in this case, what we're talking about, the interpretive quality match up to what you were expecting? There was one movie that did that. I remember I watched, it must have been last year, I think. It's called The Odyssey of Jane Doe. And when I first started watching it, I was really interested in it. It was basically about death again. Here we go. But there's this body in the morgue, played actually by this actress. I thought she did a great job. If you think about it, it'd be hard to portray a dead body. You can't look asleep. You need to look dead. She did a really good job, and it was interesting in a way watching her play a dead person. But anyway, and as the movie goes, so there's these mysteries like in her body, and the two morticians are kind of unraveling it as they go along. And for the first part of the movie, you're like, oh, okay, I wonder where this is going to go. What's going on? But then Spoiler alert, it just kind of turns into a shitty zombie movie at the end. And it just falls so flat. And like even if it turned into a zombie movie, at least do something more special. Do something that makes it your own brand of a zombie movie. It just kind of turns into this generic, they're ravenous zombies, they're out to kill you, it's magic. Oh, and I'm like, dude, like, you had me in this movie. And then it's like you didn't know how to end it. You didn't know what to do with this sort of symbolism that was going on in the movie, making people think like, all right, this is going to turn into something else more profound, perhaps down the line. This body, what's going to happen, And it just really pissed me off.
Interesting, but you don't think
that's when you get emotionally invested in symbolism or in whatever the art is communicating to you, and then it sort of throws the switch and it stops doing that and does something completely different and usually inferior. It is something that will probably cause frustration, at least. And I remember another movie in that sense. Well, I can't say that it was this intelligent as what Pitface described. It was a stupid movie, I have to say that. Although it will sound pretentious, it was a highly symbolic, stupid movie called The Cell, I think. Was the title.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. I never saw it, but I've heard that it's a bit pretentious.
A bit pretentious is too graceful. So it's about this story about a serial killer and he's in some sort of a coma, and this psychiatrist or psychologist or whatever gets into this machine where she can get into his mind, and basically it's a struggle between this guy's subconscious and all the surreal stuff that happens in there. And she has to wade through all of that in a Matrix-like scenario, let's say. So because it's like she's in this horrific wonderland of gore porn, in a sense, and torture porn. And it's so, it's trying to be super symbolic. And it's trying to present you with these visuals that are going to stay with you because they are so profound. And it really falls flat because you can tell that they have the veneer of symbolism, but there is nothing underneath. Like the guy is we don't even they are not even certain, the writers, I'm saying. The writers are not certain why this guy is a serial killer in the first place. How this fuels into his MO. Why is he doing what he's doing? So that when you know these answers, then you can do the surreal stuff that will be stemming from a specific issue that he has that can be wrapped in many different symbolisms, and that the professional will be able to parse so as to get down to the concrete problem or whatever. But they don't really know that. So you have floating, quote-unquote, symbolic stuff that, in my opinion at least, rely a lot more in the audience to fill in the blanks rather than actually delivering on a study in a serial killer's subconscious, so to speak. So it's very pretentious, and it has this horse that gets sliced in.
Oh yeah, I remember that scene.
Yeah, it gets sliced, but it keeps being alive while being sliced, and all sorts of weird things that mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing. Unless, okay, I may not be getting it, but no, they mean nothing.
Yeah, sometimes things shoot too high. Obvious examples are things like Neil Breen movies. he thinks he's being incredibly intelligent and symbolic. He really does.
Oh, yeah.
And he's really, really objectively not. So you're not missing it. It's not that the audience isn't getting it. It's just he's a bad communicator in his work, and he's not a talented fellow. That was the defense of Paul Verhoeven when he did the movie Showgirls. You know, he's a good filmmaker, and he's done some very clever, you know, pop culture films like RoboCop and Flesh and Blood and Starship Troopers with, you know, good symbolism in there that's easy to get. You know, some layers and work, but Showgirls did not have that. It was not a cleverly written movie. And that was his defense, that the audience just didn't get it. And, well, what's not to get in Showgirls?
But did he at least explain? Okay, did he explain the symbolism though?
He did. It's just like a lot of his films. It was just, you know, a critique on American culture, and you know, that aspect of it, that hypersexualization in Las Vegas and of showgirls and that kind of world. But it was just done so poorly that it was painful to watch. So there's that. It's when the creator shoots too high and they don't reach their mark. Then there are other works when, say, you know, Shakespeare is a famous example. His work is redolent with symbolism there. As a child, you're forced to read it for some stupid reason. School kids are forced to read Hamlet.
And then they hate it forever afterwards.
They hate it because they're not old enough, they're not experienced enough to be able to understand the symbolism of things like Hamlet. There's a lot about death and mortality. You're not young enough to even to understand that you are mortal, so it's meaningless to a child. So they're a terrible audience for it, but for some reason it's forced upon them. And yeah, as a child, you don't get it, and you think it's stupid because of it, and you think, oh my god, the language is too complicated. Should be modernized so I can understand it better. So yeah, that's a failing of the work and the writer. It's not me not being able to understand it. That's the writer, and yeah, he talks too much, and he dithers and blithers. But yeah,
taking that example, and that's a good point. Sometimes the symbolism will not work if the audience isn't equipped with certain knowledge or experience to catch the hints. Because in order to get the symbolism, you have to get the hint and the clue that sort of keys into what the symbolism is pointing at. So I remember when I was young, I had seen Disney's Peter Pan, and I liked it. Okay, it was fun. So I said, okay, I'm gonna go read the book now because I wanted more. And that was one of the first traumatic experiences that I had as a kid in literature, because it is absolutely nothing like the happy, touchy-feely sort of adventure. And Peter Pan is, in my opinion, at least nothing about frolicking along and flying around and having fun like you are in a theme park. I think that Peter Pan is, again, an exploration of death, and especially a child's death, and the fear of death and fear of a soul's death and all that package.
Yeah, there's mortality there, definitely.
Yeah, and that's why, in the end, spoilers for the book, Peter Pan actually dies. We don't actually see him die, but he remains stranded on this very, very narrow island as the waters are rising. And I think it's either the last sentence or one of the last things that he says before the book ends, that after all, death is the biggest adventure. It's going to be a big adventure or something like that.
Oh, really?
And it flew over my head at the time. I think I was something like 9, 10. I was very young. And I was incensed. I was really pissed at this book, and I hated Peter Pan for a few years because it was so sad, and also the way that he dies, and all of these things that he goes through are very dire. And I couldn't understand why this was happening and what it was meaning, or why he had to end a fairy tale in that way. And I might blame Disney a little bit for that, because I had my idea that Peter Pan was a fairy tale for kids.
Yeah, it gave you a preconceived notion, Yeah. I mean, the writer's I didn't intend this to be a Disney movie. Don't pin this shit on me.
Exactly. But now that I have been through a whole range of experiences, and a lot of them being very, very dire, and facing several types of death, not just physical death, but that too as well, I realize what the author was going for. And I get the symbolism, and I get the whole exploration that's happening. So sometimes you have to know that the symbolism will not work on all the audiences.
Yeah, or it might even change through time. Like, I think of, for a long time, and still to this day, a big Iliad nerd. I've been a big Iliad nerd, but the character of Achilles, of course, we can't totally understand what Greek contemporaries would have thought, but according to like the iconographies and stuff like that around the epic, we can understand that Achilles was probably seen, well, as a heroic figure, but also a tragic figure, somebody who is violent. You guys hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Okay. Somebody who's violent, but also has a human side. And like I said, is tragic. When we get into the Roman era, especially after the Aeneid, Achilles becomes a much more evil, savage creature.
Yeah.
Artwork
and stuff because
like that.
The Romans, right?
Yeah. And that's their interpretation of the character, and the character is not at all, he's not vague, but he's open to enough morally where people can say, yeah, he was a monster, he was this terrible force, and that's what the Romans did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that change in how the character was regarded.
Yeah.
In some circles, he's still sort of seen as the golden god, the absolute image of heroicism, sort of like the Alexander the Great kind of, but mythological.
Well, I wouldn't even say the Greeks totally saw him that way either. He was heroic, but he was also a cautionary tale against anger and letting yourself, losing yourself, because by the end of the Iliad, and after he calms down a bit, he has to apologize to Priam, and characters tell him over and over again how he's offending the gods with his violence, or in his hubris in a sense almost.
Mm-hmm. And also, I have to say, at least modern Greeks consider like the general take on Achilles is that he is a victim to his own emotions, like Deirdre said, but also that he's spoiled. Like he's a bit of a spoiled brat sort of thing. That he's too self-centered and therefore more of a liability than an asset in an army. So I don't think that he's taken as much of the hero in the sense like he's not like Hercules.
Well, nowadays.
Now, okay. But I'm saying, whereas, and I have to say, I had this impression before we started talking about the Iliad with Big Face. At some point, we were discussing the Iliad a lot. And I started to reconsider my idea of who Achilles was. because I consistently failed to keep in mind his social surroundings and the stakes that he had to deal with as a commander of a very high-class force. I
I'd be here over the head for a while with my obsessive Achilles fangirlness.
Yeah, you did. But it's not just that you were fangirling. You were explaining your point of view. For me, Hector has always been my favorite, and he still remains my favorite.
Yeah.
But I don't find the same disdain that I had for Achilles after talking with you and everything. Because, yes, he had to make the Greek general that was Agamemnon basically crawl back to him and beg him to come back in order to save face, given that a lot of things run on prestige. So again, I think that Achilles symbolizes how well you can balance all of these things, because again, I think he does drop the ball at some point. But
he definitely does.
Yeah.
But the Iliad is that's one of the things in talking about symbolism. That's one of the things that's made the Iliad and the Odyssey my favorite's the Iliad, because I think it has even maybe a bit more symbolism in it. That's why it's endured for so long, because you can read it over and over and over again, and the symbolism and the things that you can say about it just deepens each time that you do it. And nobody's a black and white character. One of the reasons why you probably like Hector so much, he's the enemy of the Greeks, but he's got this family life. He's defending his town. We could, whole papers have been written on these single characters. If we started going into all the ins and outs of them right now, we'd be here for ages, but it's endless,
Yeah. And for example, the whole scene between Achilles and Priam, it has always been one of my favorite scenes. But the one that I found to be hypocritical in the whole thing was Priam, not Achilles. And the reason for that is that Priam has been at least as spoiled as Achilles, in my opinion. And he has been spoiling also one of his sons. But he plays it, but he has better PR than Achilles. And I really like that. I really like how you are presented with these two characters that have been at some point in their life self-centered, but one catches more flack for it than the other, even in mainstream.
Yeah.
So...
Well, Agamemnon's my favorite because he's got the cooler name. He's got the coolest name in all.
I am mighty Agamemnon. I am tasty Agamemnon.
I think Agamemnon might be the most consistently hated person through millennia. Like I don't think anyone liked him ever after the except for
I
you.
even
You
kind
have
of like
broken
him.
the dream.
I see when I say liking characters, like it for me, like it doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with everything that they do. It means that they interest you in some way. And I think I like Achilles also specifically because he stops kind of being the thing that's good for the army, which raises a lot of questions. Anyway, we don't need to talk about it. But
we are going a bit over time. Yeah, we'll do the Iliad cast another time. We'll talk about
You should. At some point, we really should. That would be awesome to just analyze and talk about great epics, not just the Greek one. There are more out there.
Exactly.
I would love that. I would love that, as a matter of fact.
We'll talk about
that would be really cool.
King
We'd have to
Arthur
do all sorts of... We would actually have to research for this one.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about Charlemagne and all these people who I don't know anything about.
Charlemagne is not a fictional character.
He's not fictional, but he has been fictionalized, and so is King Arthur.
He is not fictional.
No.
He's not fictional, though.
No, he's real, but he's been fictionalized, and King Arthur is sort of thought the same thing, but we think he might be real, but we know Charlemagne was real. But yeah, the further back in time, you do get that fuzziness. But, was Achilles a real man, or was he just like a mythological figure? Anyway, so meaning and people who don't get it. That was this QUACKCAST. QUACKCAST number 438. Thank you very much for listening.
Everything back to the Iliad.
Oh,
Yes.
it all goes. The Odyssey is better, so fuck you. All right.
Oh, shut up.
Thank you very much for listening to the QUACKCAST. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.